Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq, with daily insight on the Nasdaq-100 index, or the NDX, which is made up of 100 of the largest domestic and international non-financial innovative companies listed right here on the Nasdaq stock market. The NDX has been the barometer for U.S. large cap growth and also one of the best performing indexes over the last decade and a half, not to mention one of the most liquid index ecosystems in the world. Joining us this afternoon, we have Joyce, Managing Director on Nasdaq's Market Intelligence Desk, for an update on technical levels he is watching in the Nasdaq-100. And Brian, last week we were talking a little bit about perhaps the rotation trade. It looks like Nasdaq-100 took the reins again this week.
Yeah, we are seeing a rotation. Believe it or not, the Nasdaq-100 is down about 1% over the last 5 days, and that's something we've seen too often. The rotation into the financials and industrials has been underway really for the full month. And so we've just very recently, for a short period of time, seen other U.S. indices, smaller caps, mid caps, begin to outperform, and more of those older school blue chip companies that you maybe see in the Dow Industrials, just for a very brief period of time.
All right, let's take a look at your first chart of the day, where we're taking a look at technical levels, and then also check market breadth as well, because that continues to decline a bit.
Absolutely. So, just yesterday, the NDX, well, in the past week, it's coming off fresh all-time highs. We had a minor pullback. It filled this gap. Let me see if I could highlight that there for you. We're at the 10,908 level. That was from a couple of weeks ago. We filled that 2 sessions ago, and then sure enough, the next day, which was yesterday, we bounced higher. We moved up again today. We're getting very close now to last week's highs. Looks like we basically came up and touched it. So potential always a potential here for a mini double top pattern, but given what this long-term trend has been off the lows, we're up more than 60%, about 65%. Just robust, very bullish price action. We've been highlighting the RSI, which has been holding this support down at that 53 level. So on pullbacks, when we see that, if and when we see that support in the momentum indicator RSI break, then I'll be more concerned that a deeper pullback is at hand. But for now, any sort of pullback that we've been seeing over the last 3 or 4 months has been very short-lived, and new highs have been made.
So what are you taking a look at with market breadth here, and why do you think that it's declining?
Yeah, so the breadth here, so I'm going to pull up now the aligned chart of the same index, the Nasdaq-100, and we're now looking at the number of stocks making fresh 24-week highs, so essentially 6 months. And what we're seeing is this peaked, since the March lows, it peaked around 27% back in early July, and we've since then been making a series of lower highs there. So fewer and fewer stocks are taking up to new highs. It could just be that the index is getting a little tired. Again, we've had a record move off the lows, just a phenomenal V-shaped rally that not only stalled, well, it briefly stalled at the prior high, but it just continued to march higher at an extreme rate. We're up on a year-to-date basis, 28%. And so, it's just very natural for whether it's an individual stock or a basket of stocks, an index at a certain point in time does need to kind of go through a period of healthy consolidation. You have investors of all types, not just long-term, value, say investors or long-term growth investors, people that are in it for many, many years, but you have many other types of investors with shorter-term time frames, like to lock in gains. And again, I've been highlighting that summertime is a seasonally weak period over the long term. So on average, August and September are the weakest months of the year. So maybe some investors are looking just to kind of lock in some gains and take some chips off the table. But again, the long-term trend still very strong, still very much intact.
All right, Brian, not related to the Nasdaq-100, but our audience certainly loves to follow Bitcoin. And while we'll have analysts on with why they think it's moving in one direction or the other, if you could pull up a chart on Bitcoin, just to let us know what technical levels you're watching it and what different kinds of indicators you use while analyzing Bitcoin.
Sure. So right here, we're looking at now the year-to-date chart of Bitcoin. If I was to put up some moving averages, you could see this here actually is a 12-month chart. You can see it's very choppy and very noisy. And so to clean that up and to try and get a clear indication as to where we want to look for clear resistance and support levels and potential breakouts and things like that, I take out the moving averages. I go to a prior high and I connect it to another significant high, which was made here back in May. And then we had a period of 2 months of sideways consolidation. So that's why, to me, this is a price point that I want to match up with the prior high. And you can see there's a clearly defined resistance line that's been in place now since early Q1 back in February. We had that breakout late in July. This was the 10% day where we marched higher, and we've basically just been trending higher since. The last 2 or 3 days, we've seen a brief pullback, but look how overbought this daily RSI became. It was up around 86.5, 87. That's no unusual occurrence necessarily for Bitcoin, which has a long history of phenomenal price moves where you could see strongly overbought and oversold levels depending on whatever we're in. But right now we're on a move to the upside. We had this breakout from let's call it a 6-month range, and so those types of moves can be powerful. What's I think maybe more important though on the longer term chart here, if we look at the weekly period chart, we could see if we connect the all-time high made back in 2017 with the high from last year in 2019, we can see Bitcoin is just beginning to emerge over this declining resistance line. And so that's important to note. We are now seeing this week what we call a spinning top candlestick as the weekly RSI is approaching that 70 level. So potentially maybe we see a week or so, or maybe longer, of some consolidation after the index can digest these recent gains. But this is nice to see. If we could see further upside from here, this may indicate that Bitcoin has quite a bit of room to run. So certainly something to keep on your radar.
All right, we'll definitely keep that on our radar. Brian, as always, thanks so much for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.